A shattered mind, Willow's descent and Drew's impending reckoning. In the cloaked shadows of Port Charles, a quiet storm has been building, one composed not of external enemies or dark conspiracies, but of unraveling truths and psychological chaos within the most seemingly composed character, Willow Tate. Once regarded as a gentle soul, bruised by her cult past but redeemed by motherhood and the pursuit of peace, Willow now teeters on the edge of a psychological implosion that threatens to destroy more than just her own future. It may leave Drew Kane shattered in her wake. This shift did not occur overnight. Rather, it has been a slow, haunting deterioration. The initial trigger was loss, the irrevocable loss of custody over her children, which upended Willow's world with catastrophic precision. Her identity, carefully rebuilt after the cult, after Chase, after Michael, was again ripped apart. In the absence of the maternal anchor she held so tightly, her psyche sought a new foothold. That foothold was Drew Kane. And he was not ready for what that kind of dependency would mean. Willow's attachment to Drew was never forged from love in the purest sense. It was survival. A woman like Willow, whose emotional compass was fractured during her years in Dawn of Day, instinctively latched onto the strongest available figure, one who promised structure and strength. Drew, the former Navy SEAL turned businessman with a checkered past, offered her just that. But unlike Michael, who gave her unconditional support, Drew offered only control dressed up as guidance. And Willow, still struggling with autonomy, mistook manipulation for protection. In retrospect, the signs were clear. Drew's subtle redirection of her decisions, his withholding of information, and his behind-the-scenes machinations all pointed to a man more invested in power than partnership. But Willow didn't see it, not until it was far too late. It wasn't until she caught wind of Drew's private meetings with the German clinic, where she believed she'd find sanctuary and treatment, that she began to understand the breadth of his betrayal. Unbeknownst to her, Drew had ensured through bribes that the clinic denied her access, framing Michael as the villain who refused to support her. That lie was not just cruel, it was psychologically destabilizing. The fallout was almost immediate. Willow's emotional state began to deteriorate. Her once docile nature gave way to compulsive behaviors. She began stalking Daisy Gilmore, a young woman with a tangential connection to her cult past, projecting onto her both fear and unresolved guilt. Simultaneously, she drew Sasha Gilmore into a manipulative relationship under the guise of emotional support. Sasha, still fragile after her own traumas, didn't see the manipulation coming until it was too late. Willow's actions, at first perceived as missteps from grief, soon appeared more sinister, intentional patterns of dominance over emotionally vulnerable women. Michael Corinthos, perhaps the person who knew her best, attempted to intervene, but was quickly pushed out. He, like everyone else, was perceived as a threat to her last tether to reality, Drew. By then, however, Drew had already begun slipping into another betrayal, a secret entanglement with Nina Reeves. While he maintained a public image of loyalty and commitment to Willow, he was reliving his thrill-seeking youth with Nina behind closed doors. He never confessed, and perhaps never intended to, instead burying the truth beneath a facade of devotion. But secrets like those never remain buried forever. It wasn't the infidelity that broke Willow, it was the realization that she had sacrificed everything, her children, her marriage, her dignity, for a man who never truly saw her as more than a useful pawn. In the ultimate irony, Willow had transformed into the very kind of predator she once escaped. She became methodical, obsessive, and increasingly unstable, as though each new truth about Drew peeled away another layer of her sanity. And Drew? Blissfully unaware, he continued to believe he had the situation under control. He mistook Willow's silence for submission, not realizing that beneath her calm exterior, a storm had been quietly gathering. When she confronted him, not in a dramatic outburst but in a chillingly quiet moment of clarity, it was unlike anything Port Charles had seen from Willow before. This was not the woman who once taught kindergarten. This was not the woman who knelt at the graves of her children. This was a new Willow, forged by betrayal, hollowed by grief, and emboldened by the desire for revenge. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. Instead, she began to dismantle Drew's life with the precision of someone who had nothing left to lose. His business connections started unraveling. Allies he thought loyal disappeared. Legal threats surfaced regarding his treatment of Wiley, who had unknowingly become a pawn in Drew's manipulation. Even the whispers in the hospital corridors about his relationship with Nina grew louder, as Willow leaked information in calculated bursts. But the most chilling development was her insistence on proximity. She refused to leave Drew, choosing instead to stay closer than ever. She cooked for him. She smiled at him. She played the role of the devoted partner, all while psychologically destabilizing him from the inside out. Drew, accustomed to controlling others, had no framework for recognizing when the control had shifted. And by the time he did, it was too late. The true danger wasn't just reputational ruin, it was physical. Willow's grip on morality had eroded so completely that questions began to arise about her capacity for violence. The once unthinkable began to feel plausible. Could Willow harm Drew? Could her desire for justice tip into bloodied retribution? General Hospital had seen its share of villains, but none as insidiously complex as the new Willow, because her evil, if one could call it that, was born not from malice, but from prolonged spiritual starvation. Even seasoned Port Charles observers couldn't predict her next move. Would she turn herself in, a final act of penance? Would she expose Drew's secrets to the world and watch him collapse in disgrace? Or would she, in a moment of chilling symmetry, recreate the very kind of manipulation and abuse Drew inflicted on her, making him beg for mercy she never received? As Drew began isolating himself, sensing something was terribly off, his mind frayed at the edges. Nightmares plagued him. Paranoia set in. He no longer trusted the food she served, nor the touch of her hand. But still, he stayed, whether out of guilt, pride, or fear, no one could tell. The final blow may come not through violence, but through legacy. Willow, now psychologically detached from the version of herself she once protected so fiercely, has begun documenting everything. Journals, recordings, even witness testimonies, all curated not just to expose Drew, but to annihilate his public identity. She doesn't want him dead. She wants him erased. And perhaps, in some quiet, unspoken way, Willow believes this is her salvation. That by punishing Drew, she can absolve herself of the guilt that has haunted her since she walked away from her children, from Michael, from everything she once called good. In destroying Drew, she hopes to resurrect herself. But redemption built on revenge is a fragile thing, and Port Charles may yet see both of them crumble before either is saved. As General Hospital moves deeper into this psychological reckoning, one thing is clear: Willow Tate is no longer the broken bird nursing old wounds. She has become a storm unto herself. And Drew Kane, master manipulator and architect of so many lies, is now trapped within its eye, with no way out. The question remains: when the last veil is torn away, will either of them be recognizable? Or have they both, in their own ways, already vanished beneath the wreckage of who they used to be?